Hey guys. So little trial run here. We're gonna play around, see what I can do here. I have some kind of the best lighting. Need to buy a light for over here to shine in my face, so it's not just one side. I'm two face. Ooh. Anyway, I think my left side's better anyway. There's some glare. It's not freshly shaved. Oh, so getting tired. I shouldn't have. I slept all day. Yeah, let's start this over again. So why am I making a video? Why am I thinking about putting this on YouTube? I have no idea. Really, I don't? All right. It's going to be the shortest YouTube channel ever. So, how real should I be? I've just spent an hour trying to figure out the lighting. Should I let you see this? Especially that, considering evidently I don't know how to use it. Yeah, I'm worried. What if that just happened? And I don't know what to say. What if I'm too real and I offend somebody? What if I don't care? What if the dog starts barking or whining? Do I beat it just to make it quiet? Doesn't like me anyway. What if I make a joke like that and all the dog lovers freak out? Do I care? But the thing is, then these things come up. They bubble up in my head and they bounce around, and I think them over and over again and refine them, and I think they're kind of funny. I think they're enlightening. And it makes me think maybe I should just put them out there. But then I don't know if maybe they're not funny. Maybe they're not enlightening. That might actually be worse than someone being offended by it. Yeah, this is definitely a bad idea. Oh, why? Yeah, I'm still thinking. I don't know how to start this. I don't know what to call it. I just feel like I might be good at it. That's weird. The problem is that every time I think about putting something out, I put a post on Facebook, I then get this really excited feeling, followed by several days of complete anxiety at the fact that I might have hurt somebody's feelings. Is that really someone who should be on Facebook or Twitter, let alone make a YouTube video? I don't think so. Yeah, I think I should stop this. But then something happens and it really irritates me, and I feel like I need to vent about it. So maybe I'll just make these and I won't ever release them. It'll be like therapy for myself. Or masturbation. You know. There's a topic I could talk about. Yeah, that would definitely make people uncomfortable at least. And then no one would watch ever again. I'd have 0 viewers on YouTube. So I could post it and then no one would see it, but I'd feel like I got something. That's it. I need to be so bad at this that no one ever watches it. That's what I'll do. I mean, really, if you think about it, it's kind of egotistical of me to think anybody would want to watch this anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe, just maybe, I'll speak my mind. Cree's Mind. That's a horrible name for this. Yeah, let's not do that. So you see, the debates in Ohio, Democratic debates, were just the other night. And on the debates, my candidate, Yang, Yang Gang, Yang Gang? Yang Gang? I don't know. I'm a white guy. Hand signs, it's not my thing. I mean, it took me like 3 years to figure out how to do yeah, see, I forgot the whole Star Trek thing. That's how much of a nerd I am. So, anyway, yeah, see, I really suck at this. Okay, so let's try this again. So, one of the things I want to do on this channel is to take kind of current events and things that are happening that catch my attention and place them into a larger perspective, historical, economic, just larger kinds of ideas. And there are kind of two reasons I want to. The first reason is the fact that it's kind of personal, that I will see something that doesn't make sense. It's like a shiny object that catches my attention because it just doesn't seem to fit, like a diamond on a beach or something. And it kind of looks at it, and I'm drawn to it. I have to look at it and study it until I can fit it into that larger complex. Complex? No, the complex is what I have. A larger context. So this is something that I do just on a regular basis, and until I can kind of fit something in, it'll kind of disturb my world until I can make it work. Yes, and I realize this makes me kind of crazy. Actually, I am. It's fine. You're not going to offend me by saying that because it's just true. There's a second reason behind this, though. And this is the thing that really drives me crazy because I don't feel in the moment and around people that I can ever really talk about it. And it's the fact that much of the world sounds reasonably ignorant to me on a regular basis because they'll say things from two larger kind of viewpoints right next to each other. And they won't realize that that doesn't make sense. Like that believing one of these things and the other, it doesn't, they don't jive with each other. They can't be dance partners. And so, and for me, this is like one of those things because, I have a complex that just kind of comes off as kind of ignorant, and it rubs me the wrong way. It kind of makes me angry. It makes me anxious. I don't like it when people do it. So maybe this YouTube video, will become super, super popular. Channel, not video, whatever. So maybe this YouTube channel will become, super popular. And maybe people around the world will realize that it's important to have kind of a larger theme and larger ideas kind of controlling and ruling what you do. And now you might ask, why is that important? And really, it's, perfectly possible to go through and live like this. People do it all the time. But it makes you susceptible to lots of bad things. Anything from being scammed by a, organized criminal over the phone or by politicians for years, because you're more you get caught in this framework of this idea, not realizing that it's counter to really everything else that you do. And they will trick you. And because you didn't look at it and you didn't say, hey, this doesn't seem to fit with this, you'll go around and say and do and act on ideas in your head, beliefs, we'll call them, although I don't love that word, but beliefs, because, that someone has sold you on it. And you can't call them on it because you didn't realize it doesn't really fit with your larger viewpoint of the world. And the larger viewpoint of the world is something I think is kind of important, but it's complex, and it's something I've kind of worked on about what's mine, what's the kind of the main points that I need to kind of say, I believe these. These are the things that drives my personal beliefs and how I want to act in the world. And this is not a normal thing to do. At least my wife tells me it's not a normal thing to do. So part of what I want to do is to talk about those kind of larger points. And then also just point out those little shiny diamonds in the beach that just don't make sense. And this brings us back to the debates that I was talking about with a different shirt on. So, wow, brain fart. Wow. So, the debates happen. Andrew Yang is up there, my guy, having a good night. And he's making a really good, strong point about the fact that, we really have to be kind of gruff with Russia about this election interference thing because it's a big deal. And so we need to set standards with this and really kind of start from scratch and move forward on making sure they understand that we won't put up with this anymore. And in part of doing that, he makes a comment, I don't have it written down exactly, but saying, look, we've messed with elections in the past. You've messed with elections in the past. You messed with the 2016 election. We're going to just draw a line in the sand, say, hey, the past was the past, but this can't go on anymore. You can't mess with our elections without us considering it an act of hostility. Perfectly good, reasonable point. Totally logical, no problem. And then Amy Klobuchar has what I like to call a baby boomer meltdown. She triggered like you wouldn't believe. And if you don't work or spend much time around baby boomers, let me tell you, triggered baby boomers are so much worse than triggered millennials. Triggered millennials can be occasionally irritating. Triggered baby boomers, we're talking tears, crying, like full mental breakdowns. It's horrible. So she spazzes out and says, I don't think you can draw a moral equivalency between us and Russia. And I literally, before she even was done with the comment, my brain went nuts. Because that's not a diamond in the beach. This is like a big, giant, like cow turd, white sand beach. Like, what the hell is that? So first of all, let's just start with what I'm not going to talk about in this video. That trying to draw a moral equivalency between us and Russia, we fought a Cold War for against each other. We've been at odds since World War II in the 1940s, and the list of horrible, horrible things we've done, and I mean moral equivalent things we've done, you would need a college class to be able to go through. It's ridiculous. Just the concept of this. So that just freaked me out altogether. Just the little part of that. And she goes on and, spews about all the nasty things she thinks Russia's done that we've never done in her short little comment. And really from there, I was like, okay, so what's your point? Like, you bring this up, there's got to be something behind it. And then there wasn't. And I, took a couple deep breaths. I said, this is Amy Klobuchar. I mean, come on, people. She's at 1%. I never liked her in the first place. Again, politically, she's, I don't know, I don't even want to get it. Okay, maybe I'll get a little into it. Politically, she's like if Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton had a kid. That's who she'd be, even though she's only a couple years younger than them. So I just was like, okay, who cares? No one, this is dumb. It's a debate. All kinds of dumb things are getting said. I'll move on. But then the news media, good old CNN, and of course, our wonderful friends at MSNBC jump all over this because evidently they think that by attacking Yang on this, that they are going to somehow get him not to succeed anymore. That because they can't take on the 160 whatever policies on his website, they were going to pick off of half of a line he said in the debate. And this has come up over and over and over again when he gets interviewed. He gets interviewed by Rachel Maddow. She wants him to pick out which country that we've meddled in his elections that bother him so much. And he kind of doesn't really freak out. He just kind of is like, what? Like finally just says, take your pick of a couple South American countries. And let me tell you, the reason he's having problems answering that question is in the last, 40, 50 years, it's 80, 90, 100. Someone will have to fact check this, but it's a lot of countries that we have meddled in elections with. This isn't like unknown fact. This is hardcore in textbooks in high schools fact. Like This is crazy. So this is one of those, yeah, like things. Like it just goes, it's a diamond, it's a pile of poop. Now it's a big pile of shit. And I'm just going, what is going on? And why does this bug me so much? And then something happens that honestly I haven't listened to that much, but Hillary Clinton is on some podcast and slyly basically tries to, you know, not sound too much like Trump, but slide in a comment that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian plant. I think technically what she said was that the Russians really, really like her, and she's going to run a third party campaign to get Trump reelected. I don't know where this came from. I was like, what the heck? So all of a sudden, it's like we have all of these random comments that make zero sense. Like, why would people be saying this? These are supposedly, the big kids in the room. These are the ones oh, we can't do that. That'll never get passed. That's not realistic. They're the grown-ups in the room. And I mean, literally, they're doing things that you couldn't explain if a kindergartner did them. So one of the things that this kind of made me think about is, oddly enough, a person I hadn't thought about in ages. And his name is Ralph Nader. Who? Some of you will remember him. But yeah, Ralph Nader. Like Green Party, maybe, from the 90s. Again, I have very little memory of him. But he made one comment that has always kind of stuck with me. And that comment is that there really isn't much difference between Republicans and Democrats. And I think it maybe stuck with me because I remember my parents just being super angry about this. Like, this just made them very mad. They would go on listing all of these things that were different between them. And part of me always kind of was like, yeah, but I think you might be right. But it was never one of those things that I necessarily put, again, into my larger framework of things. It always kind of remained as one of those little diamonds on the beach where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that, but I kind of do. Like, it just didn't really click. And at the time where you had the moderates really in control, there were these differences that they would point at. The Democrats were for labor. The Republicans were for the religious right. They would talk about things like abortion and unions and all of this stuff. So they had these issues that they'd be like, see, we disagree on this, 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 and this, and this is why you must vote for us over them. But then I think the thing that kind of made me stick in my head was, wait, why do you have to tell me about, why are you having to make this case? Everyone was a little too emphatic about it. Like, it seemed to me if there were that many differences, you wouldn't have to highlight them. They should be reasonably obvious. So, I don't know, that just stuck with me over the years. But I think it might be now that we can see this more clearly than ever. It is, I think, in retrospect, when we go back, to where we were in the 90s, and we realize that one of the most racist bills that's been through Congress, Joe Biden and Clinton pushed through. I mean, the crime bill in 94 or whatever it was is seriously, I mean, it's literally created more slaves than there were in the age of slavery. This thing is horrible. And it was pushed for by Democrats. You can look at, let's take the case of labor, which, by the way, has been utterly destroyed by free market economics, which, by the way, were also pushed for by all of the moderate Democrats and also supported by the moderate Republicans. And it made me think about the politics of today. And I think we maybe realize that for the first time in a long, long time, we actually do have two parties. They're not Republican, they're not Democrat. They're corporate funded and people funded. And it makes for some maybe unusual bedfellows when you start to think about it. But if you stop to think about the politics of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and H.W. Bush, it's really easy to draw massive comparisons into the things they're for. And maybe it's because this is so true now that we can see this, because Trump is just out of nowhere. Like, the norms have all been ripped down, And so when we went, you tend to take a look back and you look at the norms and you go, hold on a second. Where did these become our norms and how did they get shifted? Really conservative, crazy conservative. We'll talk about this later. Crazy conservative. So now you look at that and you start looking at Amy Klobuchar and Hillary Clinton sounding an awful lot like Mitt Romney and George Bush. I mean, literally, the stuff coming out of Klobuchar's mouth is straight out of the Bush Cheney crap about during, the wars. Like anyone who says anything about anyone else that's not positive, you can't say anything about negative America that's not positive. You can't look at any of these facts about America that don't cast us in the best light, or you're a Russian. And Hillary talking about Tulsi Gabbard, who wants to talk to foreign people and mostly just doesn't want our men and women out fighting wars that gain us nothing other than oil. Crazy idea. Medic in the military actually seeing the actual cost of this and that she's passionate about it. But she's a Russian? What? So when you see that kind of all of a sudden veil being pulled off and the similarities, and then you look at the other side. And then you also see some other interesting bedfellows. So on the other side, I just recently read an article that actually was giving Yang kind of a backhanded compliment. And they were comparing him to Ron Paul, saying basically he's become as successful as Ron Paul. He has a very strong base of voters who support him. He can raise a lot of money from them, but he never really did anything. And that's kind of the point of like, okay, so he's going to be this guy. He's going to have, kind of slightly libertarian ideas. And, there'll be a lot of people talking about him. There'll be a lot of buzz. It won't really be from the media. It's going to be more grassroots, but he's not going to do anything. Now, personally, I don't think that's true at all. I think there's a lot of evidence to show otherwise. But I'll be honest with you, I'll take the compliment, and I think Yang would too. That's great. Because Ron Paul put ideas into the Republican Party they had to deal with, and kind of moved the positions on a lot of the Republican Party. But it brings to the point that there is another party basically forming. And this party has people like Ron Paul, Bill Held, different people on the right, but people like Yang and Bernie. Warren, we're not so sure about. She was kind of more on the other side, but she's kind of a centrist between these parties, maybe a moderate, but in the current day. And you have Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, but you have these people who are supported now by lots of money, enough money to compete with the bank-supported people like the Bush and Clintons, and they all of a sudden there's these similarities, not just in how they run their campaigns, but just their ideas. Like you could imagine them sitting around a table and agreeing on quite a bit, much like you can kind of imagine the Clintons and the Bushes and the Romneys and the Dukakis's sitting around a table and agreeing on most everything. There actually is less difference between Hillary Clinton and George W. Bush than there is between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And there is less difference between Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul than there is between Ron Paul and George W. Bush. We do actually, I think, for the first time, in a very strange way, have two parties. And I think Nader might have been right all those years ago. It's just that he was also kind of wrong. Because at the same time, he said, okay, see, now I messed this up. So let me try that again. I think Nader was actually right back then. We only had one party, but he's wrong today. Today, we actually have two parties. And if we look at that larger picture, and we don't get caught up in the infighting, which, trust me, the media really wants. They want the Bernie bros to fight the Sanders people, to fight the Yang people. They want the Ron Paul and the Bill Weld and these independent and libertarian kind of thinkers and ideas to fight each other. But the discourse today is these people are actually now very much headed towards power. Because what we're actually talking about is the difference between a wealth tax and a value added tax, which, by the way, is an argument about which is one is more effective at doing the same exact thing, garnering the money from the very, very top and spreading it out on everyone else. The difference between a federal jobs guarantee and a $15 minimum wage and a UBI, they have the same point. It's just a different way of doing it. We have this group of people looking at these ideas and kind of coming at it. You know, you look at AOC, a star within kind of the younger generations, and going to be a huge star in the future of our politics. But this is a very different idea. And I think we need to not get caught up in being so angry with each other that we don't realize the fight, and I'm going to say we because I'm definitely in that camp, that really the fight is against the establishments. If there's a neo in front of your political ideology, that's who we need to be focusing on. And we also need to call them out when they start acting and proving that they're all just one group, like Nader said, that they've actually been one political party like Mexico ruling us for years.
Sorry for that. I got on a little bit of a rant. I won't explain the Mexico comment. If you didn't get that, look it up. Anyway, wow, I really do have an amazing amount of brain farts. Okay, let me recenter the point here a little bit. So, if we have two parties, and I don't know what to call these because it's a newer idea to me, but we'll have the Neo Party, right? Although I don't like that name because I like the Matrix too much. But for now, we'll call them the Neos, right? And then we have this other party. And the thing is, if you take that larger framework, like I like to put things into, you realize how much really makes sense. So first of all, I mean, just look at the divisions that we start seeing in the name calling that is kind of encouraged, again, by our media. Let's just look at the capitalism-socialism debate, which, first of all, a socialist Democrat or democratic socialist or whatever they're calling this, they're not socialists, okay? I don't know how many people who've actually studied this even a little bit can point out, but they don't even meet the definition of a socialist. I have never heard Bernie Sanders or AOC say anything about wanting the government to take over all of the, the gas and of the electric and the transportation and the manufacturing and and have the government run all of that, which, by the way, is what a socialist is. But it makes sense, though, how this debate gets brought up over and over and over again. And who's saying it? When you look at the stage, at who's calling this out, Klobuchar, and is it Tim Ryan, or who? All the moderates that have just fallen by the wayside in this debate, election. That when you look at that, that again, one of these weird things that we have people in the Democratic Party using this as a tool against other people. That's a Republican thing in the past, but they're not really socialists. So why is this debate? Why are these words? Why is this coming up? And you realize again that that's out there to divide and cause infighting in the community of this other party. It's a way to make inroads and keep them all separated in small little groups and not be able to gain any momentum. Because again, the more they can have, the people, the Bernie people saying to the Warren people, you're not really socialist enough. Which, again, is a fake concept in the first place. One of the reasons I'm a huge fan of Yang is he kind of just calls this out and says, why are we arguing over things that were 20th century labels that really have nothing to do with anything anymore? Like, that's not what we're talking about. You basically have to call it something else because the ideas coming from this party aren't socialist. They're not necessarily capitalist either. They're something different. Some stuff is broken and we have new technologies and things are changing and we got to come up with a different idea. So You also then look at, wow, oh my God, it just happened again. But on the other side, what I think that we, whatever party this is that we are a part of now, have to really look at is the money. Because I think ultimately the differentiating factor between us and the Neos is the money. And so instead of getting caught up in whatever 20th century label they're trying to put on stuff, what we have to look at is where their funding is coming from. Because where that money is coming from is a pretty clear idea of what they want to have happen. And what they want to have happen is everything that's been happening for the last 30 or 40 years has gotten us into this insane point in history that we are at right now. So, what do I mean by an insane point of history? So, the number of issues that you look at right now that a majority of polled Americans are for, that are still being brutally debated in Washington and to a grinding halt of nothing happening. I mean, gun control. Yep, most everyone's for that, except for a couple little fanatical things. Yep, we need to control guns. We're not trying to take guns away, but there has to be controlled guns on it. This is a position that you would have a hard time finding people that would disagree with, almost anywhere. Let's look at the fact that our medical system is completely messed up and we need to do something different. Again, hard time to find a few big fans of insurance companies, even though that actually came up on the stage that people were in love with their insurance companies. Really? Okay, well, the numbers don't prove that. The facts don't prove that. So even something like abortion, when we look at LGBTQ rights, that again, these issues, one after the other, there's this really strong American sentiment that agrees on stuff that we're still spending all this time arguing about in Washington, D.C., between Republicans and Democrats. It doesn't make sense. You're like, wait, why are we stuck? Because we all kind of agree on this stuff. Like, you should be able to come up with a pretty easy compromise that would get everybody involved and be able to go forward and do it. But see, if they're caught up fighting those battles, then we're not looking at the larger battles, which is the massive income equality. This is something that the liberals will talk about and they will put out there, and by liberals, let's call them, again, I'm messing up names, the Neos. All right, try that again. So the Neos will talk about this all the time, right? It's something that you can't ignore, even if they wanted to. But the things that they want to do, then they use this other little step, this other little trick. It's called incrementalism. We need to do this little thing and that little thing, and then take this little step over here and see we're moving towards these things. Don't you see? Look at this. Look at this movement we've made towards this larger goal. These little baby steps. And they have literally brainwashed basically an entire generation into this idea that we have to do that because big steps can't be done. No one even questions it beyond that. The big step can't happen. And let me take a second to veer off to the side a little bit on this whole idea of change. And that big change can't happen. Because some of you right now might go, but big change can't happen. Some of you might still be stuck in your head of, well, no, but that's just true. And the question I have for you is to really look at that and say, why? Why can't big change happen? I look around the world and there are governments getting overthrown, massive changes. I mean, the changes going on in China right now, just at an economic level, in India. I mean, we're talking mind-numbing, massive amounts of change happening in days and months. And we've been prodding along for 40 years doing the same thing. So the thing you have to look at is kind of how they've maybe moved you into this idea. This kind of, is important when you think of this incrementalism. That the Neos have basically moved. So the Neos have used a couple tricks to kind of make this idea come from. And so it's something you get supported in a couple different ways. One of the largest things is the unintended consequences. There is this idea that if we make this big change, these unintended consequences might happen that will be worse than what we're in right now. And the problem with that, in just a logical sense, is that if things are messed up now and you never try to make them better. So again, if we look at right now and the number of systems, let's take healthcare. The healthcare system, I really hope anyone listening to this can say, is the fact that we spend $18 trillion a year on healthcare is ridiculous. If you disagree with that, then I can't help you. But so let's take the healthcare system. So to look at that, and we see the healthcare system, and you just take a glance at it, you don't have to do much. And all of us just in our own experiences know this is rotten to the core, that there are big, complex issues, but this thing we have going on now is crazy. And if you don't need any more proof than the opioid epidemic, then I could give you a million examples. So, but what they would say is, but if we make this change to the system, oh, some bad things could happen. I just saw an ad on the TV the other day from drug companies saying, if we make a change, we might actually make it so that new drugs are never made and we'll never solve the cure for cancer. I'm not kidding you. It was an actual ad on TV. That this is the kind of the mindset that they get into with this. But what's crazy is it just on an odds perspective, you could stay where you are, which is untenable for most of the country. It doesn't work. But the fear of something new or different that might be bad is somehow they've, again, in certain people's brains, it just freaks them out and they go, oh, no, well, we can't do that then. Because there might be unintended consequences. And what's even crazier is that they can actually pull this off in this country where you can literally just go to Canada and walk around and see a country running a different system, or the UK, or any other European system, and the world didn't come to an end. No one's, lying on the street corner dying. There's not lines of thousands of people in a communist era hospital, all drab and gray. Nope, but it's running just fine. They're all happy with it. They all like it. It's no problem. But they have actually gotten into your mind enough to say, but that kind of change, it's a big change, even though it's a proven change and a research change and well thought out and tested, it's a change, so it has to be bad. So the other one that the neos use, this one, might sound familiar for anyone who's a supporter of a candidate who's not Biden or Warren, or actually at this case, even Sanders. So I'm being a supporter of Yang, and I'll walk around and I talk to people about the idea of the freedom dividend, his UBI. And it's amazing how many times people will tell me, that sounds great. I really like that idea. The more I looked into it, it's a great idea, but it'll never happen. There's no point for me even to think about it, because there's no way you'll ever make that change. And this one makes my brain pop on a regular basis, because again, it's one of those things that people say that I just want to go, oh my God. So basically, we have been brainwashed into thinking that no change can happen, so we shouldn't try. They've actually gotten the entire country of the United States, and basically, 99% of the baby boomers have just been sold this bill of goods and bought it wholesale. Don't make changes, because one, they might have unintended consequences, and two, you'll never convince so-and-so down the street, so it's never going to happen. So don't worry about it. Just move on and live your life in the pain you're in right now. I mean, literally with the medical stuff, sorry about your broken leg that you can't afford to get fixed. Just walk on, because we're not going to change the medical system so you could actually fix your leg. This is insanity. And the thing is, I know many people who would maybe consider themselves a neoliberal, but I don't think they're really opening their eyes to the fact that they've been sold a bill of goods like this. And it isn't the Republicans, because that's the first thing you're going to say. Oh, that's a Republican thing. That's what the Republican says. My side never said that, but they have. And they have done things, but they don't want to look at it. And this is also really the third thing against change, is that even if it would come up, they then have this wonderful two-party system, the neoconservatives and the neoliberals, and they'll just grind it to a halt in infighting, with just name calling in the football game of politics, which is really entertaining and has nothing to do with actually making our lives better. So when you look at this larger picture, that we maybe actually for the first time have two parties, I think it's important that if you're interested in kind of moving forward and not sick and tired of kind of the way things are, the response is not to just throw in the towel. The response is not to believe everything is impossible. The response is not to ignore politics. It's to really join this massive army of people who are ready to change this. And the thing is, again, by dividing things, they look and say, well, there are these Bernie supporters and these Warren supporters, and there's the Yang supporters, but when you look at that group, you look at the libertarians and the disaffected, the Obama Trump voters, and the people who are really ready to take some big steps and get us out of this muck we've been in. It is a massive amount of people. It is a majority of people. So it's important to not let these little things like split us, and to take the moments like this when the veil comes down and Hillary Clinton is suddenly sounding like George W. Bush. And actually, the comment was a very Dick Cheney thing to say. And you have Amy Klobuchar up there on the Democratic stage, that you call it out and notice it. And that you also then look at the people who are pushing for the same things you're pushing for, even if they want to do them in a slightly different way. And that you come together as a group and say, look, we have to kind of think of us as our own party, that we can have this infighting and this disagreements, but we're not them. That there has to be an us and a them here, but it is not a Republican and a Democrat. It is not a Trump voter. It is not, any of the stuff they're trying to sell you. Because again, on this, I have to kind of make an aside on the Trump voter thing. Diverting, sorry. But we also have to look at that and say that there are lots of people who voted for Trump who didn't vote for Trump, but they voted against the establishment. And I almost don't like that word either. They voted against the neos, right? That's who they were voting against. And that when you take this group, if we thought of ourselves as a party, if we worked together as a party, we don't like this idea that change is impossible. No, change is easy. Change is simple. Change is right around the corner. But see, you have to think of it in a different, larger scheme. Because if you keep doing it with the Republican, Democrat, red, blue bullshit that you are being fed on MSNBC and CNN and Fox by all of the companies, which, by the way, are all supported by the same advertisers, follow the money, all of a sudden you go, wait, we do have a group of people and of money who are willing to pool their resources and support candidates and have good conversations that we can take into Washington, not just at the federal level, but at the state level. But every time you fall into that red-blue thing, you have to stop and go, wait, why am I doing that? Because that is where we then suddenly move further and further away. It seems less and less possible. Because it is. It's absolutely possible. And again, gonna go back to my guy. Look at the math. Look at the numbers. Look at the polling. And then the thing you have to realize is, again, that's that shiny little diamond in the sand. And you go, wait a minute. Hold on a second. That doesn't seem to fit. Why does all of the Americans agree on all these subjects, but yet nothing's ever happening? And this is how you change that. And this is why I think I need a YouTube channel. If any of that made any sense at all. How snotty, bitchy Amy Klobuchar and a random comment by Ralph Nader many years ago kind of can change the way I see things or think about things. And it's not like that was a new idea. It's again, it's kind of in my head, but the clear delineation of all of it kind of comes from that kind of random stuff. And that's the stuff I'll probably talk about if I ever put this out on YouTube. Or I'll just watch it and think I'm really, really good on my own computer. Have a good night, guys.